So as we move into today's theme on deliberation and polarization, I am delighted to introduce Alexandra Geese to deliver keynote remarks. Alexandra has served as a member of the European Parliament since 2019. She's the digital expert of the Greens and EFA Group and a co-founder of the Eurostack initiative, and a leading advocate for digital sovereignty. As a key negotiator of the Digital Services Act, she has shaped the legislation that strengthens Europe's ability to set its own rules for digital platforms and online spaces. So from understanding building peace to understanding all of these digital issues we're also going to be discussing, please join me in welcoming Alexandra Geese. Thank you.
Good morning. Working? Yes? Okay. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here today. For a very simple reason, it's the first time this week, and I travel a lot, that I see the sun. I've been in gray cities the whole week, so it's so wonderful to walk out, and even if the air is crisp, to see blue sky. So thanks so much for having us here at Santa Colma. It's really a privilege. It's also really a privilege to be among peace builders. I feel very honored, and I would already now thank you for the work that you're doing, which couldn't be more important in this particular moment. And when I thought about what I wanted to say today, I will speak about the objective links between polarization, war and peace, democracy, and digital technologies and business models, but I would like to start with a very personal note. I've been in politics for 6 years now, in European politics, and a question I often get asked is, what was the most emotional event, the most emotional meeting you have had in this political career? And there are always two things that come to my mind, almost at the same level. And one is being in Kiev and meeting Ukrainian prisoners of war who had been held by the Russian army on the Crimea and then released. And I remember being in this room with a group of men and their wives and their daughters and their sisters. And these men, and you see them suffering, but they can't bring themselves to speak up. It's the women who speak for them. And I'll never forget that man sitting there the whole time and listening very intensely. And at a certain point, there were just his tears, flowing over his face. And he couldn't speak. And at a certain point, he did make an attempt to speak, and he just said, one sentence. And then he had to stop, and it was the women speaking at their place. But you could feel this extremely deep pain. And the other one was not in Kiev, but in San Francisco. And it was meeting the moms. I wanted to say the parents, but actually it was just the women in the room. It was meeting the moms of children and teenagers who basically have been killed or taken their own lives because of digital technologies in the internet, by pedophiles committing suicide. And these moms speaking to me and telling me, our only hope is European legislation. That was, a lot to take home and to fight for, and I keep meeting them. Megan Garcia is an important name in the US space that some of you will know. I think these people, and they speak up. They have already lost the most precious, the most valuable thing they have had in their lives. And they still have the courage to speak and go out there and stand on panels and stand before audiences and tell people, do something about this. So this is what really moves me and gets me to get up every day and travel around the world and do this work. So what is the link between war and democracy and peace and polarization, all this? It's pretty simple. I mean, democracies, usually real democracies, statistically don't attack each other as much as dictatorship or authoritarian regimes do. There's some famous exceptions that spring to our minds, but statistically there's a very clear link between having a democratic society and having peace. And there is an authoritarian turn taking place globally. And it started basically in 2011. You start seeing that the number of democracies globally declines and the number of autocracy increases. And I was at the conference 2022 with the leader of the VDAM Institute that some might be familiar with, that studies democracies and governments around the world. It's based in Sweden. And Staffan Lindberg said very clearly at this conference, when I asked him, why is this so? You know, what is what all these places globally, very different countries, have in common? And it's not socioeconomics, it's not services that work, which are absolutely important. It's not individual choices of political leaders. He said it's toxic polarization, which is short for hate and lies. And that happens in the internet space, it happens in the digital space. It's not just people getting at each other's throats, it's the digital space, it's the big internet, the big digital companies, it's big tech, deciding to reward content that focuses on hate, that focuses on violence, that focuses in dehumanizing people and rewards that content with reach, with visibility, and with money. You know, it's a business model. And that is the first factor. It's called engagement-based ranking. Which content really reaches people? The one that creates engagement. Engagement in the internet means clicking on stuff, putting emojis on it, putting contents, sharing it with your friends and with your network. And that sounds nice. But we know from the Facebook whistleblower Frances Hogan, for a like, you get 1 point in that ranking, and for an angry emoji, you get 5 points. So the angrier you get, the more that content gets disseminated to people. And that's one of the very basic things that is wrong with the digital business model. It rewards hate and violence. Because this is what we interact at, because this is human instinct. You know? When we get attacked, we react. And this is exactly what happens. We get attacked, we feel attacked, we get content that really makes us angry, that's really outrageous, we attack. We counterattack, we do something about it. And this is what then the big tech companies tell us, oh, this is what people choose. But if I walk in the street and I get attacked by somebody, I get mugged, I defend myself, but that's not my choice. So the first thing to do is to give people real choices back as to what they want to see. Then there's the second factor that is coming in very strongly right now, and that's being measured particularly on X and on TikTok, where it's a little bit easier to measure, and that is a direct manipulation of the algorithm favoring extremist actors in the political space. This is where we have the studies. I'm sure it's true for other things as well, but in the political space especially. So there's a bunch of studies now. I know the ones for Germany, for Poland. There was a great study that came out by Sky News for the UK 10 days ago, how Elon Musk is boosting the British right. Look it up. It's easy. It's well done. And it really shows that, especially on X, extremist content is rewarded. On the left, and in particular on the right. So if you are a political party or political candidate in the moderate conservative, and in particular in the progressive space, this is where it gets worse, the moderate progressive space, you are invisible in the internet, whatever you do. It's not about how good your content is. The fact that it's not hateful, the fact that it's not violent, the fact that you're not dehumanizing people makes you invisible. And that's a political choice by tech billionaires that we need to call out and we need to defend ourselves against. Thank you. This all gets a lot worse with AI-generated content, obviously, because you can generate that content, you know, not even by the dozen, by the millions in a few seconds. And it gets worse with the personalization through AI chatbots, and with that content feeding into AI chatbots, because what is ChatGPT? It's basically a big database of all that stuff. So there is a multiplication effect right now. It gets worse and worse. There's the targeting, obviously. The fact that, I mean, probably most of you are very much familiar with Facebook's role in the Rohingya genocide. That was targeting. It's targeting target based on their religious beliefs. And we made that illegal in the European Union. This is illegal now since 2022. So you can't do it directly anymore, but you know, Meta tells you, you tell me what you want to do and we figure it out. So specifically on political targeting, we had another regulation coming up for political content, political advertising, so paid for content, not organic content. And it came into force the 10th of October this year. And what did Facebook do? What did Meta do? They say, well, we're not going to do political advertising in the European Union anymore. And a lot of civil society organizations wrote to me and called me saying, you know, we can't reach our people anymore because we can't put content out anymore, which is not completely true, but and so we called Facebook in the committee in the European Parliament, called Meta, and to explain what are you doing? And they said, well, you know, if we can't target, if our clients can target their targets anymore based on this very personal data, we just don't want to do it anymore. We don't want transparency. We want our clients to be able to target people based on their religious belief. Because what did they do in the US campaign? You know, an Elon Musk funded PAC targeted Muslim people saying Kamala Harris is pro-Israel, she has a Jewish husband, and pretending to be the Kamala Harris campaign. And then they did the same thing, targeting Jewish voters, pretending that Kamala Harris was pro-Palestine and pro-Hamas and whatever, with the aim of suppressing voters. You know, and I stood up in committee, I mean, haven't you learned from the Rohingya genocide, where you did the same thing, and you still want to do it? So these are the people we are dealing with. And what does that mean? That there is no space anymore for middle ground, there's no space for compromise, and this is what we need in democracies. We need to be able to keep talking to each other. We need to be able to say, okay, I have a very strong political position on this point, but I do understand that half of the population has a very different position, so how can we get together? This is how local government works. This is how national government works. This is how the world works. You work globally. This is why we have the United Nations and all this forum where we discuss to come up with something that everybody's sort of unhappy about, but in the end, we have peace. And that's not possible anymore with the system. And anybody who's still trying gets hate and harassment campaigns, and this is why there's so few women in the internet and the political part of it, especially on X anymore, because they get hated, they get these harassment campaigns. So what to do about this? This is all very depressing, but you know, as the mayor said, it's not about being a pessimist, it's about being a realist, because if you don't look the reality into the face, there's nothing you can do about it. So there's certainly the European regulatory space that is important, that gives important guarantees, but it's under attack in a way that I have never seen and that I would never have thought. I spent 5 years working on this legislation, so seeing it now taken down is a very frustrating experience. And there is this unholy alliance between the tech bros, the MAGA movement, President Trump, people like Peter Thiel, Mark Andreessen, very, very powerful people who have the US government as their first lobbyist, and they are making an impression. So the European Commission is not really seriously enforcing the kind of legislation we need, that we have. You know, engagement-based ranking should be systemic risk to democracy. We have that law, they're not enforcing it, they don't even want to hear about it. And there is an ongoing attack on our privacy legislation that is important to protect people against targeting, for example, against scams. So I think we need to keep working on this to show which are the avenues, but right now, in this moment, the political space is extremely difficult because really the European Commission and many national governments who should know better are captured by these tech companies and are listening to the US government, a little bit in admiration and a lot in fear. So this climate of fear among the high spheres of European politics is really concerning. So what else can we do? I think one really promising avenue is to build new platforms, because it's not about digital technology, it's about digital business models and the fact that they now so closely align with authoritarian agendas. So building new platforms who have different agendas, who really give people a choice, I think that is a very important thing to do for all of us, and we try to get some public support for that. But it's also important that civil society aligns around this, you know, let's build our own. If the powerful are not giving us good platforms, let's build our own. I think that is important. And the third thing is organizing community, organizing civil society around this. This used to be a very expert technical space, digital rights. You know, you mentioned this, the techies. This is not a technical issue. This is the absolute basics for our democracy. It's the absolute basics for peace, because if we don't fix what is happening in the digital space, we will lose democracy, and we are seeing that, you know? And we don't have a 10-year, 20-year horizon. It's 2 years, 3 years, a year. We need to do this now. And if you look at, if I go out, if I speak in the high political and economic space, it's like, yeah, but there's nothing you can do, and these companies have won, and let's just adapt and work with them. If I go out to normal voters and I talk to normal people, all the parents who are concerned about their kids, all the women who are concerned about the harassment, say, well, I used to love Facebook, and now I can't go there anymore and talk to my aunt because I got all these people hating me. What's going on? People hate that kind of polarization, not being able to talk to their neighbors anymore. Not to be able to talk about politics in the workplace. And there's a broad majority to bring this down and to go to a better system. We just need to find words to say this is not about technology, this is not expert knowledge. This is your basic knowledge. You know what you want for your life. Just come up and say it, and let's organize around it. And this is what we need to do. The climate organizations. Why is climate policy failing? Because of the climate disinformation, very systematically being sent out there and reaching people. This is why we don't have global consensus anymore. The feminist movement already mentioned women's rights as so much under attack right now, and we're already feeling it. Last mandate, it was sort of, I get digital space, it's a lot of men, so I got invited to these panels, all men on panels, saying, I'm not going there if you don't get a second woman. And they were, oh, yeah, you're right, I'm sorry. And 2 hours later, there was a second woman on the panel. And now it's just obvious that there are 100 men in the room, and nobody cares. It's normal again. And that's just, it's just the tip of the iceberg. It's just the anecdote. But we know that the underlying attack on women's rights is so bad. So let's tell everybody, you need to have not only your own agenda, your own topic, be climate, be women's rights, be peace, be it, all the important causes that we all share. But this is cross-cutting, and it's the basis for everything else. So let's organize everybody around this and build a really, really broad platform of society, make this a big political topic. This is not why people choose their party, why they go out to vote, but it's something they bring on top into the political agenda in a way that government and politicians can't ignore this anymore, and then we can win this battle. Thank you so much.